My name is Menabawey. I'm a gastroenterologist at University College Hospital. And joining me on the podcast sofa is...
Hi, I'm Amy Irvine. I'm a GP in City in Hackney.
There's a lot of people out there who are interested in sim and interested in situ simulation, which is what we enjoy, and maybe wanting to set up something in their own networks. And so maybe helpful to hear from our experiences of setting something up locally. And why was in situ, or why did you choose to do that in GP?
Well, there seems to be a bit of a gap in terms of training for emergencies in general practice. The colleagues that we're working with in general practice might not have managed an emergency at all, for example, our receptionist. So it's a unique kind of position where, in contrast to hospital where you're working with lots of nurses and HCAs, which might be commonly managing medical scenarios, emergency scenarios. General practice is also unique in that we're working within the same team all the time. We're not rotational. So we're working with our receptionists and nurses and HCAs for a long time. And so doing it within the environment that we're constantly working with makes much more sense in terms of knowing your environment and picking up more latent errors that way. I know that you did some in situ as well, didn't you?
Yeah, well, we actually did some in endoscopy. That's off the back of doing the sim job at the Homerton, which a lot of the network will know, and it do a fantastic work. And they have been doing in situ simulation all through the hospital, but within the endoscopy unit every other week, kind of talking about that, embedding it within the culture. And obviously the same with any sim, it's trying to get people to, suspend their disbelief and kind of buy into it. Were there any events in particular in your practice that you'd heard of that kind of drove you to set up your simulation?
There was definitely a time in London where acid attacks weren't infrequent, and you might have people coming in off the street with all sorts of violent crimes, even like stabbings or acid attacks. So a couple of practices wanted to run through an acid attack scenario and then potentially do a stabbing scenario as well. So we generally base it on what the practices want to cover. So it's thinking about things like that that might walk in off the street that would just completely throw you out your comfort zone, that you would be expected to manage.
So what advice would you give to someone who is in general practice or in primary care, or trying to circumvent those obstacles you faced?
So I think it is about embedding it in the culture, in terms of that this is something it's for learning, it's for practice, it's not an assessment, it's not a test.
One thing I learned from my simulation job, as a doctor, you have no idea actually what the nurses are thinking, no idea what's going through their head. Whereas you think that everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet, but actually there's things that nurses see that I just do not see, and vice versa. So I think getting that into professional faculty is absolutely key. Any words of advice or encouragement or anything that you give to anyone who's looking to set an in situ up in their own department?
I would just say probably a good place to start, which is where I started, was approaching our local hospital, which had a simulation department within it, because there's a wealth of knowledge there that you can tap into and use.
If you're a trainee, talk to other trainees in your network, because other people may be doing something similar. And certainly within gastroenterology, there's three of us within our deanery who are all interested in sim and all doing it along, and actually kind of collaborating and sharing scenarios and coming up with interesting ideas. So I think that collaboration is key here.